What's up? What's up, guys? Welcome to another 10-minute talk. I got Coach Kaitlyn right here, and then we got Coach Chris on the other side, aka Coach Tigger, because that's who we all know him as. But today we're going to talk about everybody's favorite topic because I feel like a lot of people, they saw the title of this and they were like, I can drink alcohol and still see results. Well, let's talk about how that works. So first, we want to get into a little bit of like how alcohol actually impacts your results. And we can separate that into two different categories, right? We can do behavioral, like how it affects how we do things. And then we can think about like the physiology, with the physiology of it, right? How it actually impacts how our body works. So behaviorally, this one's pretty simple, guys. Like it's no secret that when you drink a little bit of alcohol, your willpower, your choices, your decision making, it's probably not at the best that it could possibly be. And a lot of the reason why people struggle to fit alcohol into a healthy routine and a nutrition plan is because, drinking relaxes them. So they don't really have the willpower or the discipline that they once had. And then they get a little hungry and they're probably not reaching for like chicken and broccoli. I mean, most people probably are reaching for like bar food, burgers, fries, things that are going to really soak up that
Pizza.
alcohol. And yeah, pizza, that's the big one. And that's definitely not going to help with your results in the long term. But also, like, if you're going to the gym the next day and you had all that crap food and you're dehydrated now because of the alcohol, you're probably not going to have the best workout. So that's kind of like the behavioral side of things. But Chris, like, I know that we want to get a little bit more sciencey. So fill me in on how alcohol really impacts our body.
For sure. So when we're drinking alcohol, alcohol has its own metabolism, right? So that metabolism, we're not going to get too crazy into what happens, but essentially we take that in and it acts as almost a poison within our body, right? So for those of you who have had the lovely hangover, which I'm sure everyone's dealt with hangovers at this point, right? That causes nausea in our body. We don't process it. We do actually utilize it as energy and what's kind of right. So if you have ever, for example, stopped drinking alcohol for a period of time or indefinitely, you might have noticed that you started craving more sugar. And that's to replace that because it gets that hit of, oh, I want to keep using this for energy. So it does nothing good for our body, to be quite honest with you. Potentially in small doses, I'm sure people have like said, "Oh, I can drink wine and get the antioxidants and blah blah blah." Sure, most of us don't do it in those small healthy doses, but for the people who are drinking a little bit more frequently, you have to understand, like Caitlin said, it's going to dehydrate you, right? We're going to lose electrolytes. We're not going to feel as great. We're not going to have that energy. And it's going to ultimately impact our muscle building and our fat loss, right?
Mhm.
Especially if you're someone who even, and we're going to touch on this, I think, in a little while, but if you're someone who is good about tracking your alcohol with your plan to stay on track, your body's going to lose muscle mass inevitably from that. Okay, regardless if you're hitting your protein goal, it makes it really difficult for your body and your metabolism to work properly. So we're going to talk about some things that also get affected, like sleep and some other stuff. But we'll teach you at the end of this episode how you can plan for that and stay on track. But we have to understand at the end of the day, there has to be a moderation to the process.
Oh yeah, and just kind of going off what you said, like your body does treat alcohol like a poison, like in the sense that it does shut down other metabolic processes in order to prioritize breaking down that alcohol and getting it out of your system, right? So what that means is that your body isn't really concerned about burning calories or utilizing body fat as fuel. It really only cares about getting that alcohol out of your system. So it's also going to inhibit or reduce muscle protein synthesis, which if you guys have like heard us talk about that in the past, you know that that's literally how we build muscle. So going off of what Chris said, you're going to experience muscle loss if you're doing this on a consistent basis because those things do add up. But, you know, how great do you sleep after a long night of drinking, Chris?
Not great. Not great at all. You might think that you're sleeping great, but there's plenty of research that demonstrates that we're not even actually getting full sleep. We're getting unconscious sleep, which means we're actually not even getting into our REM or non-REM sleep cycles. And if we're missing those cycles, that's where we're actually recovering. That's where we're actually patterning cognitive function, memory. So we're missing a huge piece of what we're trying to get the most out of, right? I think a lot of us actually struggle more with recovery than we even do our fitness and nutrition, right? And on top of that, it's going to raise your cortisol levels from stress or not getting that sleep. So it's just this cyclical pattern of things we talk about all the time, that alcohol can really just detriment almost every one of these processes. And don't get me wrong, I drink alcohol. You can plan for it. But at the end of the day, I do that knowing that I'm hindering my progress. And that's
Mhm.
something you have to be aware of, right? Especially for someone who's trying to lose 50 pounds, who's new to this journey. Like, it may not be that important at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's where you kind of have to like separate what's actually important, what's not important, right? Like you can go out and you can have a drink here or there and understand that it's going to maybe impact your result a little bit, but as long as you're aware of that and you're okay with that, that's fine, because again, it comes down to living a life that is going to incorporate alcohol sometimes if that's something that you want to enjoy. And like, let's be honest, like alcohol is like a social thing, right? People go out and they drink with people to like bring relationships together, and relationships are another pillar of health that so many people ignore. So we don't want to like ignore that. So it's up to you whether or not you want to include alcohol in your plan or not. Is it going to benefit you to not have it in your plan? Maybe. Is it going to benefit you to have it in your plan, depending on how it impacts your relationship and your social life? Maybe. But that's a
For
decision
sure.
only you can make. So before we well, actually, let's get into that. Let's talk about how we
Let's
can
do
add it
it.
to your plan. So, Chris, how would you talk to a client who wants to add alcohol into their plan? Say they're going out for a Saturday night party and they want to add in like a beer or something. How would you help them track that?
For sure. So, first and foremost, I want to point out alcohol itself, as 1 gram of alcohol, has a
Mhm.
caloric value of 7 calories. I don't actually use that value when I'm using this with my clients, though.
Yeah,
I just
same.
wanted to put that piece in there. So, let's just throw it out. Just understand, though, that it does have value, if we can use that word. But what I do is I look at either their carbs and or fats. We're never sacrificing protein. We're always trying to keep the mission of hitting our calorie goal because we need to get the results, right? So that's the first two things. We're still staying on track there, and I can break down like what that looks like. But let's say a beer is going to be roughly 150 calories. Obviously, there's 100-calorie beers and light beers and blah blah blah. But let's just say it's 150 calories, right? So I would take that and I would divide that by 4 or 9 to figure out how much carbs that would be, how much fat that would be. Now, the strategy depends upon the person and what they're comfortable with. Perhaps you're a higher fat person with your macro split where you're 30, 35, 40%, or possibly the other way with the carbohydrate. I would probably take it away from the number I have that's bigger. And just because your carb number is bigger than your fat number doesn't mean that the percentage is bigger, right? Let's remember that, because 1 gram of carbs is 4 calories, 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. So we would do that math to figure out how much room we have to breathe. And that's how you can factor in your drinks. Now, what you'll realize is after 2, 3 drinks, you're taking up a meal and a half, 2 meals, maybe more, depending upon the person. So you have
Mhm.
to be really strategic. And if you're going to implement like actual strategy, it's planning for everything else up until that point, and possibly even having a plan for after, because I would say 80+% of the clients that I work with, it's probably even higher than that number. If they have alcohol, they almost never hit their protein goal. And it's not because I'm not a good coach and we don't employ a strategy. It just makes that much more difficult to control if you don't have that plan. And if
Yeah.
you have a plan, you still have to execute on it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like you have to literally plan up your entire day. Like I would recommend like, hey, if you know you're going to go out and you're going to drink some alcohol, pre-track your entire day, including those alcoholic beverages. And like Chris said, like if you plan to have 2 drinks, you're having 2 drinks. I don't care if somebody gives you a shot, like you're having 2 drinks. Like stick to the plan, because a plan that you don't actually execute is a garbage plan, right? It doesn't matter what it looked like. It
Exactly.
matters what you actually do. And then when it comes back to like, hey, should I take my alcohol from carbs or should I take it from fats? Like Chris said, it's going to depend on the person and what they feel most comfortable doing. I would say the majority of the time taking it from fats is probably, or taking it from carbs, I'm sorry, is going to probably be the best strategy, because like we said, we don't want to sacrifice protein. So we're never even going to look at that. But then fats are actually an essential nutrient that your body needs. Carbs, not necessarily. But if you're somebody who's training really, really hard and you're like a CrossFit athlete or an endurance runner, maybe taking it from carbs might not be your best strategy. So again, going to depend on the person. But 2 big issues that I see right there, Chris, going off of that is like you already said, people drinking more than they plan. So like if you have room
Yep.
for 3 drinks, you have to have the discipline. You have to have those 3 drinks and you have to just manage it. Right. And then the last thing is the eating, right? Because most of us aren't necessarily craving like fruits and vegetables when we're having those 1 or 2 drinks with dinner. So if we're out
Never.
you're at a social event or you're celebrating a holiday, whatever it is, the temptation of food is going to be there and it's going to be overwhelming. So expect that temptation, plan for it, and have something that's going to satiate you, something with protein in it that you can have when you're tempted. But
For
I
sure.
think that we really touched on everything that we really wanted to, as far as like how it impacts us behaviorally, what are some strategies we can utilize when we're going out to drink, and like how it actually impacts our results, and how to track it. So Chris, do you have anything else to add before we say goodbye to the people for the week?
As a veteran drinker, unfortunately, and I don't take that hat with pride, but I have a few tips I think that you should think about.
Yeah,
So
lay it out.
first, if you are going to be drinking, electrolytes, water. Those are things that if you have that before you go to bed that night will help tremendously, right? And it's not just with how you feel, but actually you feeling better is a result of your body having better nutrient, better value going on inside. So we're going to combat at least a little bit of that process. You're not going to feel 100%, especially as we get older. We know our metabolism works not quite as well, but that's something you can do to help mitigate some of those effects. Again, if you're keeping your alcohol in control and planned, we hopefully won't feel that bad anyway. But that's something I want people to think about, right?
Ooh, and let me
Now,
add on that
go
actually
ahead.
real
Yeah.
quick. So like when you're looking at electrolytes, obviously water's important. Electrolytes are really important in this scenario too. Don't go for like a Gatorade that's going to come with like tons and tons of added sugar and let's be honest, Gatorades don't really actually have that much electrolytes in them anyway.
Barely.
Let's go for something that's going to have no sugar, no added sugar, and it's going to have a good amount of sodium and magnesium and potassium. So things that I recommend to my clients is like the LMNT brand. So you guys can look up those electrolytes. But the First Form hydration sticks are great too, because both of those aren't going to come with added sugar, but they're going to have the electrolytes that you actually need to give you the results that you're looking for in that scenario. But go ahead, finish up what you were saying.
So here's the other thought for those people who maybe are trying not to drink. We need to think about the environment we're in if we're going out. So I've gone out and tried to be sober at a bar and other places. You end up eating shit food to make up for not drinking, or having a sugary drink or something else instead anyway, right? Or you're having caffeine, a sugar-free Red Bull or something at night, you're having caffeine. You're still doing things that may not value you. So pay attention to those foods, because you're going to further dehydrate yourself and get further off your progress if you still go eat a burger and fries if you didn't plan for that, right? But maybe you need to change your social environment, and this is a different school of thought now, but maybe you need to figure out other social activities where alcohol doesn't need to be a factor at all if you don't need that social lubricant, right? So that's going to a rock climbing gym, that's going to a CrossFit class. There's plenty of different things that you can do. You can go to a park and find other people. There's always something you can do to start to build social community for yourself if you're trying to avoid drinking. I know that that's not often talked about when it comes to the alcohol conversation, but that's something to think about if you're looking for that out, because not everyone's supported in that. I have plenty of friends who always push me to drink. I've had family members who push me to drink, especially during times where I'm trying not to. And that's not easy. You don't feel supported. So you need to figure out an outlet that you can have, because at the end of the day, willpower, only so many people have strong willpower. So it's figuring out
that's
what
such
you
a
can
good
do.
point. That's
Yeah.
such a good point, because so many people struggle with just the willpower and the discipline. And when they have all these people around them that they love and they have friendships with, telling them like, oh no, it's okay, drink. And you're like, but I have this goal. Like, you have to figure out what social environments are going to actually be productive for helping you reach that goal at the end of the day.
For sure. For sure.
Awesome. Well, I love the
Yeah.
tips. So thank you for sharing those tips, because Chris is the veteran drinker. I am I used to have a glass of wine occasionally, and then I just haven't drank in like 4 years, and I don't like how it makes my body feel. I just don't like not being in control. So
That's smart.
Cool. Well, we will then see you guys next week, but thank you for watching. See you guys.
Captain Tigger out.